In California, you're supposed to stop for a pedestrian at a crosswalk. And in a recent study, some 90% of drivers did, except for those driving luxury cars, like this BMW. They were almost as likely to run the intersection as wait for the person to cross the street.
Drivers of those BMWs, those Porsches, those Mercedes were anywhere from 3 to 4 times more likely to break the law than drivers of less expensive, low-status cars.
In a country more and more polarized by inequality, UCal Berkeley's Paul Piff led a series of startling studies showing an apparent link between wealth and, well, unseemly behavior.
Oh, by the way, there's candy there. It's actually for children for another study, but you're welcome to take a few pieces if you want to. Okay. Thank you.
That's the script an experimenter recited to every subject. And the results?
Wealthier participants took 2 times as much candy from children as did poor participants.
Another experiment tested honesty in reporting dice scores when cash was on the line.
People all the way at the top who made $150,000, $200,000 a year were actually cheating 4 times as much as someone all the way at the bottom who made under $15,000 a year just to win credits for a $50 cash prize.
So, experimental evidence that rich people are more likely to break the law while driving, help themselves to candy meant for children, cheat in a game of chance. Also, to lie during negotiations and endorse unethical behavior, including stealing at work. The academic paper that resulted made headlines everywhere. The Wall Street Journal article leading with the question, "Ready the pitchforks?"
It is very clear that this study of social class touched a nerve.
Psychology professor Dacher Keltner is Paul Piff's boss and co-author.
We publish these studies in relatively obscure scientific journals, and literally the next day we're getting hundreds of emails from around the world, and a lot quite hostile.
I've gotten a lot of vitriol and hate mail from people calling me out for junk science and having a liberal agenda.
Hey, but wait, didn't those who complained have a point? That the research was done at a famously, some might say infamously, liberal university.
Hey, they're in Berkeley. What other results did you expect them to get?
I regularly hear the Berkeley idiot scientist who's finding what they expect to find. Let me tell you, we did not expect to find this. Our findings apply to both liberals and conservatives. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're wealthy, you're more likely to show these patterns of results.
Results consistent across 30 studies he's run on thousands of people all over the United States. So what is it about wealth that might make people behave differently?
What are we doing here?
We're playing a game of Monopoly that's rigged.
This game is typical of another kind of experiment Piff likes to run. Instead of studying actual rich people, Piff gets subjects to feel rich in the lab. The designated Monopoly money bags starts with a few legs up. $2,000 versus the poor man's $1,000. An upscale playing piece, the rolls, versus an old shoe. The right to toss 2 dice instead of just 1.
2, I've got snake eyes. I'm on a
Meaning I assign the role of rich person, get an extra turn.
but I roll again because I've got
Yep, because you rolled doubles.
6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's Tennessee Avenue, and of course I'll buy that.
Meanwhile, poor Paul Piff.
I only get to roll 1 die, and as it says here, when I pass go, I collect a lower salary. I collect $100.
Here's your 1 die.
Great, thanks so much.
Yeah, sure.
I can't roll doubles. I don't get opportunities to move very far along the board.
Piff has run this experiment with hundreds of people on the Berkeley campus. The rich players are determined randomly by coin toss, the game rigged so they cannot lose. And yet, says Piff, despite their presumably liberal bent going in,
When we asked them afterwards, how much do you feel like you deserved to win the game? The rich people felt entitled. They felt like they deserved to win the game. And that's a really incredible insight into what the mind does to make sense of advantage or disadvantage.
so even though a subject like myself is just play acting,
You consistently find that I begin to attribute success to myself, even though it's a coin flip that got me on this side of the board as opposed to that.
You, like a real rich person, start to attribute success to your own individual skills and talents, and you become less attuned to all of the other things that contributed to you being in the position that you're in.
How is the American dream achieved?
Piff is part of a team headed by Dacher Keltner that studies the psychological effects of both absolute and relative poverty and wealth.
We can also ask, do people believe in this dream?
What they're studying is economic inequality, which, as our viewers probably know, is as high as it's been in almost a century in this country.
There are new data coming out on a daily basis from top laboratories showing no matter how you look at it, the effects of inequality are pernicious upon things like bullying on school playgrounds, the quality of your physical health, how you handle disease.
What's somewhat surprising, says Keltner, is that even the haves suffer.
One of the things that Wealth and Money does is it comes with a set of values and if you want, a deeper ideology, and one of them is generosity is for suckers, right? And greed is good. But it turns out there are a lot of new data that show if you're generous and charitable and altruistic, you'll live longer, you'll feel more fulfilled, you'll feel more expressive of who you are as a person, you probably will feel more control and freedom in your life.
Of course, there are plenty of wildly generous rich folks. Just look at the growing list of billionaires who've pledged to give the bulk of their fortunes to charity.
And 6, I got a doubles again.
But statistically speaking, there's a significant tendency to look out for number 1 if you're at the top.
What do I got?
Oh, you got a get out of jail free card.
Oh, excellent. That's very nice. Although I could probably, given the fact that I'm the rich person, get bailed out.
You could.
And as Piff observed when he ran this experiment with hundreds of doggedly friendly Berkeley types, those in the role of top dog began to bark like one.
And so I get the $200.
You get $200.
Well, give me 140 because I'm going to buy Mediterranean.
Okay, done. Now listen to the way that you just spoke to me. It was very directive, almost like a demand. But we found consistently with people who were the rich players that they actually started to become, in their behavior, as if they were like rich people in real life. They were more likely to eat from a bowl of pretzels that we positioned off to the side. They ate with their mouths full, so they were a little ruder in their behavior to the other person.
While I was thanking God no pretzels were present, Piff continued. Those arbitrarily assigned the role of low dog became more nearly man's best friend.
If I take someone who's rich and make them feel psychologically a little less well off, they become way more generous, way more charitable, way more likely to offer help to another person.
So when people are playing this Monopoly game and they're in the poor person role that you're playing, they, if they were rich in real life, become more understanding, more compassionate?
Not just in this game of Monopoly, but in a whole bunch of other experiments that we've run where we make rich people feel poor or poor people feel rich. You find the same kinds of differences.
Differences that could conceivably help people understand their subconscious biases and perhaps even moderate the costly effects of economic inequality. But until that happens, we'd suggest you look both ways before crossing.
Call it a candid camera of ethics, a sort of lab experiment that can have unexpected results. Here's John Quinones.
Three teenage boys looking for trouble. Big trouble.
Looks like you overshot the trash can, Zach.
Within moments, they surround someone's car, and they're trying to break in.
Can you break in? I think I almost got it, dude. You almost got it?
Yeah. And now they spray paint the car with graffiti. This man who's driving by has seen enough.
Hey, is that your car? What? Is that your car? You can. You're up somebody else's car? I guess I'll call the police then.
A friend of the man arrives and makes the call to 911.
The cops will take care of you.
Okay.
It's a nice moving facility for you guys.
Yeah.
You'll love it 3 squares a day, buddy.
But the police are not coming, and these teenage vandals are not going to jail. They're actors. The car and the hidden cameras belong to us. We wanted to know if anyone would step in and try to stop a blatant act of vandalism in a suburban parking lot. But as you'll see, before our experiment is over, we'll get a lesson in human nature we could never have predicted. Our teenage vandals are loud and pretty brazen in broad daylight, yet people continue to walk right by. Do they think the boys are trashing their own car? Well, even when it becomes clear the car is not the boys, many keep right on going.
I hope that's your car.
Yeah, I'm spray painting my own car.
You're being sarcastic?
Yeah.
This woman seems to be almost joking with the boys. Almost.
Don't do mine, please. I can't do it. Please, don't do mine.
I promise I won't do yours.
The women keep on walking. Later they told us they would have called the police. And how about this woman? Will she step up? She looks concerned. She's soon joined by another woman. They stop, speak, but keep going. She says getting involved isn't worth the aggravation.
I have to say there's times where I have been a witness to things and I've had to take off work and go to court.
I was horrified, but we did keep walking. I should have done something.
This woman keeps an eye on the scene from a safe distance, but we'll come back to her later. Our vandals, meanwhile, have been at it for nearly 3 hours, destroying that car and seldom being challenged. But they'll soon meet their match. This man, sprinting up the path, demands some answers.
Is it yours? Is it yours?
No.
So why don't you just mind your own business?
Because this is public business.
Public business? That's public business.
Facing somebody's vehicle, private property in public.
Let me show you how much I care, sir.
Adios. Have a nice day.
The boys, meanwhile, are undaunted.
Hope you enjoy your jog. Something else you wish to say to me? Something else you wish to say? No, I'm sorry. You're the one that keeps talking as I'm walking away. You got a problem? Yeah, I do. I hate folks that talk to me behind my back. Why don't you just... I'm on my own business, but shut up. All right. Why don't you just take... Shut up! Oh, okay.
Sir, hi. I'm John Quinones. We're with ABC News.
When we introduce ourselves to Brian Jakes, he's still pretty steamed at the boys and at us. While he calms down, we talk to his wife, Dawn, who had walked by the boys earlier.
I was keeping an eye on him. I was waiting for my husband to come back, because I wasn't going to confront 3 boys by myself.
Brian has cooled off now, and he says he was just acting on a lesson his father taught him.
You can't turn your blind eye or deaf ear. Somebody's in trouble.
It wasn't your property.
No, you're right, it wasn't. But, you know, it was somebody's. You know what? We're all in this together.
He took action in a way that was selfless, and it was about stopping something bad from happening.
Jack DeVidio, professor of psychology at Yale University.
He made a difference. I don't think it was a smart thing to do, necessarily, but I think it was a good thing and the right thing to do.
Dangerous?
Dangerous. That's why most people will walk by.
Indeed, our vandals have been at it for most of the morning, viciously destroying someone else's car. Dozens of people have walked by, yet only a handful have challenged them. But we're about to discover that if this kind of vandalism in broad daylight doesn't get much attention, something else does, something we could have never imagined. Remember, all that destruction by our vandals triggered just one 911 call. But it turns out 2 other calls were made to 911 from the same park.
911, where's the emergency?
In Richmond, New Jersey.
But those calls were about another car, parked nearby.
A couple guys in the car laying down like they look like possibly they're getting ready to rob somebody.
Rob somebody? How does he know that? The caller hangs up, but a few moments later, he's back.
We got 3 black kids laying in the car, and there's a lot of little kids in around. I'm just keeping an eye on them.
In fact, the young people in the car are just sleeping. They also just happen to be black.
Whether it's because of the media, because of history, we as Americans have an association of blacks with crime. Both blacks and whites have that association of blacks with crime.
It doesn't make sense. You call the cops on sleeping kids and not the vandals.
There's nothing rational. But if we have the associations of blacks with crime, we see what we expect. And even if they're sleeping, we can make that into a potential criminal act.
If that had been white kids sleeping,
then they'd be white kids sleeping.
But coming up, if a few African Americans resting in a car trigger calls to 911, what'll happen when we replace the white vandals with 3 black actors? Will that make a difference? When What Would You Do comes back. To find out how people react to a blatant act of vandalism, we sent white teenagers, actors hired by us, to trash a car in broad daylight. And then we watched as dozens of people walked right by. As it turned out, there was just one call to 911. But at the same time, from the same park, 911 operators got 2 other emergency calls. And to our astonishment, those calls were not about our vandals, but about the young people in this car.
A couple guys in the car laying down like they look like possibly they're getting ready to rob somebody.
The people in the car were African American, and they were just sleeping. We know because we invited them here. They're friends and relatives of another set of actors hired by us for the second part of our experiment. What'll happen if we change the race of those vandals? And if this group could trigger 911 calls just by dozing in their car, what'll happen when we send these black teenagers out to do some real damage? As she walks by the vandals, this woman is already on her cell phone.
Yeah, I'm at the Ridgewood Vet Fund, and by the walking path, there's a group of 1, 2, 3 kids.
And right on her heels, this man, cell phone in hand.
911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, hi. I'm over in Ridgewood at the Shaw River Park, Ridgewood Avenue.
Okay, people spray painting a car?
Yeah.
All right, we got it ready. We'll send it off.
This woman asks the boys what they're up to.
Yo, no, we ain't doing nothing, man. Just having fun, man.
While maintaining a safe distance, she also calls 911.
There's kids that are beating up on a car. How many kids? 3 kids. Black or white? They all 3 look like they're just black. Black males? Yep.
Are you gonna walk away like nothing happened?
The police will be here.
Huh?
The police are coming.
All 3 were angered by the vandalism, but wary of confrontation.
Teenagers are kind of unpredictable.
They seemed like they weren't afraid of being caught. I wasn't going to go especially right up to them because they had tools that could be used against me, and there's 3 of them and 1 of me.
The destruction continues, and it's clear that in this predominantly white suburb, our 3 African-American vandals are generating more interventions and more calls to 911 than the white vandals.
Neighbors pulling out the cell phones. One lady almost tripped, calling like, they're like, and I'm like,
they're here.
Hey, is that your car?
No? Is it yours?
No, but you shouldn't be doing that.
I felt outraged. How dare you come to our backyard and do something like that in the middle of the day in front of our kids? I don't care where you're from. I don't care what color you are. You're doing something illegal. And so immediately I decided to call the police.
Ridgewood Police, can I help you?
Yes, hi. There's actually 3 kids in the park, and they're vandalizing a car. They're actually painting the car, and they're trying to break in the door right now.
My husband was right to say that, what if those kids had a gun? And at that moment, honestly, I didn't think about that. The way I am, if I see something, I do something right away.
What I found fascinating is that she defined that situation as her backyard.
Suddenly it becomes us against them.
It was clear then that these people are outsiders and they don't belong here and they don't belong here doing the things that they're doing.
This is not your car? No. You have to stop.
Why?
It's illegal.
Okay. It is?
Yeah, somebody's going to call the cops.
This conversation lasts 4 minutes, and this woman even gives the boys her name.
What's your name? Kim?
Which they promptly paint on the car.
Now we said that you did it. Let me see. Now we're going to call the cops on you.
So what difference did it make when we changed the vandals' race? A total of 10 calls to 911 compared to 1 call when the vandals were white. And more people stepped in.
They probably recognize that there's vandalism going on more because these kids are black, because of the associations, the expectations, the stereotypes they have, and the fact that these kids are from a different neighborhood.
By intervening or calling 911 on the black vandals, people are doing the right thing. But the white vandals were more likely to get a pass.
Obviously, what you guys were doing was wrong, and what the white kids were doing was wrong. But the reaction was not the same.
That's not the same. You know, they say, you know, treat people equally, but, you know, as you see, you know, it's really still going on, you know. There's many different types of racism.
We asked those who intervened, would you have acted any differently if the boys had been white?
I think I would have done the same thing. Maybe I would have stopped them sooner.
I did notice they were African-American young boys who were in a white neighborhood, but if they had been white kids, I mean, we would have done exactly the same. I might have done it quicker.
I probably hesitated because they were black. I don't like to assume that 3 black kids are up to trouble.
But the response to their vandalism isn't what these young men will remember most about this experience. They'll remember that while the white actors were busy laying waste to that car, there were 2 911 calls reporting suspicious African Americans asleep in their car. The people in that car were actor Justin Chandler's family.
These kids are destroying this car and trying to break in. They're not even worried about it. Meanwhile, they worried about Justin's family over sleeping in the car. Black.
It's wrong. Well, I mean, here we are breaking into a car, and there they are sleeping, you know?
I actually wasn't even shocked. I was just sort of offended.
Tells me that there's still racism out here. And people are frightened by people color their skin.
Your message to folks?
It'd be a better world if we could stop racism. I don't know if that's going to happen because it's such a big world, but you can help to stop. There's always someone that, you know.
This will help.
Yeah, this will help. Maybe this could help. It'll take a real long time.
But maybe this will make a difference.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully.
Leave it, guys.
How mad do you get when you see something wrong taking place? Just take another look at what happens when our innocent bystanders reach the boiling point. Deep in the heart of Texas, at this little roadside bakery, bigotry is being served with a coffee and Danish.
Sir, I had a question.
No, ma'am. We don't serve Muslims here.
I'm sorry?
This is America. We're at war with your people.
I don't know what you think I am. I'm just trying to get an apple.
Well, you're a terrorist is what you are. So
excuse me?
You got to take your business elsewhere. We don't serve your kind here.
The other customers at this bakery near Waco seem to hear everything, but they barely look at the Muslim woman, even when the language is tough to take.
Get back on the camel and go back wherever you came from.
Sir, I'm an American. I was born and raised in this country.
No, you're not. Americans don't wear towels on their head.
Muslim Americans say these are words they hear all the time in all parts of the country. But here at the bakery, what the customers don't know is that this Muslim woman and the man behind the counter are actors. The bakery is working with us, all part of a primetime hidden camera experiment on prejudice and patriotism.
Please take your business elsewhere. Am I asking too much?
When no one even tries to help her, she makes a direct appeal.
Sir, would you mind ordering me an apple strudel? That's why I'm here. I can give you the money. I have no problem.
That's not a problem with the money, huh?
Please no, sir.
Huh?
I'm not going to let you
how
order.
much do I owe you?
But when he gives her the cold shoulder, she finally just leaves.
You could have helped her out. You could have spoken up. Why not?
Me speak up for her? Well, if he would try to do some harm to her or something, then I would have.
But why not try to set him straight?
I really think that a person that owns his own business should be able to say who they sell to.
She's not American.
Others seem to agree with our actor as to who's an American and who's not. Is it all based on the way we look?
I'm an American citizen. I just would like an apple strudel, please.
Well, I'm sorry. Then why don't you dress like an American? You're so
This is
American.
for religious purposes, sir, and I don't think you have any right to say anything
So
about
I'm
this.
religious. I don't wear, Halloween costumes around. I mean, am I wrong here, sir?
Not me.
I run
No.
my business the way I want to
That's
run.
right. That's right. Don't come in here without shoes and shirt on.
This customer is adamant that the man behind the counter is doing the right thing.
I'm ready for you.
But the fact is, it's against the law to deny service to someone based on their race or religion.
My name is John Quinones, and I'm with ABC News. What did you think of what you heard here?
I didn't hear anything racist.
He told her he wouldn't serve her.
Well, he can say he wouldn't serve you if you come in here barefooted without a shirt on.
But she wasn't barefoot or without a shirt on.
Well, she wasn't dressed right.
What do you mean?
If I was running a place, I'd do the same thing.
You wouldn't let Muslims shop at your store?
I sure wouldn't.
We never expected customers to be so candid.
How do I know you don't have a bomb in there?
Watch what happens this time when, once again, our Muslim woman is denied service
This is not right.
and again leaves.
I mean, we reserve the right to not serve.
That's right.
A certain kind.
That's right. That's, I appreciate seeing that. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that.
He not only commends the man behind the counter for his discriminatory behavior, but he gives him the thumbs up, not once, but twice,
Good job.
All right.
as he leaves.
Sir, can I talk to you, sir, for a second?
But when I approach,
Sir, we're with ABC News.
there is no thumbs up for me.
We staged a little experiment in there to see how people would react to that kind of attitude.
You're not an American.
I am an American. That man took it a bit farther, telling me I'm not an American.
He was threatened.
Jack DeVideo is a social psychologist at Yale University.
So when we as Americans feel threatened from the outside, we're going to define ourselves in very rigid fashions. Either you're with me, and if you're not really one of me, then you must be somebody else who's against me.
The young woman in our experiment is an actor, but for this woman, discrimination is all too real. Nahaya Javed helped us design our experiment. Although born in Chicago, she says she's constantly characterized by fellow Americans as the enemy.
They always start off with you're a terrorist, Osama lover, towel head, camel jockey, on and on.
While attending college in Texas, she says she continually suffered verbal abuse and has even been physically attacked just because she's Muslim.
They assume I'm not from here, and if I tell them I'm American, they're like, no, you're not. Just because you were born here doesn't make you American. And I'm like, so what makes you American?
It's a daily battle.
Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like living in America, I should have to fight this battle.
Meanwhile, back at the bakery, our actor is at it again.
But how do I know you're not a terrorist? Terrorists look like you.
But this time the customers are sympathizing with the Muslim woman.
You're a Christian. Come on, leave her alone.
Right, I know, but can you blame me?
Yeah, I can't blame you, actually.
Why? What's the problem?
All right, we'll get out of here. You need to go yourself, actually. What do you need to do?
Okay, sir.
Thank you,
I'm a
sir.
good American, all right? We're at war with these people.
My dad's a veteran. Go yourself.
So is mine.
And he's not the only one who walks out in anger.
You need to stop segregating against people. It's wrong.
Excuse me?
She's an American
No,
just like
you're a
everyone
bad
else.
American.
Time and again, people speak out with their pocketbooks.
You lost a couple of customers, just so you know.
But look what happens when this man threatens to leave.
You're not a good American, sir.
I believe I am a good American. My son just came back from serving in the Army for over a year in Iraq, and that has nothing to do with her rights.
I understand that.
Thank you, sir.
And I hear what you're saying. But I
can't
mean,
believe you would be so discriminatory. I'm deeply offended by that.
I'm sorry to offend you, sir, but I've got to live with myself.
Seething, the man vows to fight back.
I will let people know this. I've stopped here every time I've come by this place, and I'll never stop here again.
Why did folks get so upset?
They saw an injustice. It's justice that binds us together. It's justice that makes us a society. Any threat to that kind of sense of justice and fairness undermines the entire system.
You're really not going to serve her because of what she's wearing?
No, I'm not.
Perhaps that's why more customers are outraged by our actors' hateful behavior than approve of it.
You're not dressed like an American. I don't know
But
what
no
you have
one
on.
is more persistent than these two young women who can't believe what they're hearing.
Take your jihad, take it back out to the parking lot.
Excuse me?
I mean, I gotta protect my customers, okay?
You're really offensive and disgusting.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to protect you here because we
You're
don't know what's
sick.
going
Dressed
on.
like that doesn't mean anything. This is a different
How do you know?
culture. You are
These people
so
are trying to
ignorant.
kill
It's
Americans.
disgusting.
She is my culture. So you're ready to serve me, but you're not ready to serve her?
You're obviously dressed like an American.
Big deal.
She's Muslim.
And unlike the others, they don't just leave in anger. They stand their ground.
So you're going to regulate what people wear?
Yes, because I believe
you
the
the
degree
manager?
of... No, I'm not the manager.
Can I speak to your manager?
I'm John Quinones with ABC News.
It's only when we catch up with our heroines that they finally let their guards down.
I'm with my friend who's, Muslim, and it's, I've just seen how people treat them differently. And it really hurts me.
Just watching them stand up for what they believe in touches Professor DeVideo.
In a way, they defended America, and I was impressed by that, because they wanted this to be a just society, a just place, a just bakery.
I'm John Quinones.
And remember this man whose son served in Iraq? He's also moved to tears.
Every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity.
No matter how
In
they're
every
dressed.
situation, no matter how they're dressed.
Never have we seen reactions so polarized, from a thumbs up for prejudice to an emphatic thumbs down.
Go yourself.
Two different Americas, both convinced they're patriotic. At the end of the day, 13 people stood up for the Muslim woman, while 6 sided with the clerk. But the majority of the bystanders, 22, did or said absolutely nothing. That's what's most frightening to Muslims like Nahaya, who was watching our experiment. In fact, so frightening that they often avoid going out by themselves.
It's really sad because I'm old enough to be able to do things by myself. I shouldn't need a chaperone all the time. But that one time that I'm alone and something bad might happen, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Hi, I'm Nahaya.
It's no wonder this young woman was so moved by the people who came forward to protect a stranger who just happens to be Muslim.
Thank you so much for what you did, and I wish more people would do these type of things. And
I do too.
It would make my life a lot easier.
God go with you.